And welcome back. Oh, I already spoiled the lead. Normally I let the picture show up. Welcome back to Zanpakuto Creation Series. Today's one comes to us from Daniel F. West. What is Solomon Grundy's Born on a Monday Zanpakuto? Which is actually Solomon Grundy is actually based off an old rhyme. Solomon Grundy, born on the Monday, and then it's christened on Tuesday, so forth and so forth. And then that was the end of Solomon Grundy. But in this case, we're looking at the DC character. Now, there are actually very multiple interpretations. We'll mostly be looking at the version that shows up in the animated Justice League series, because that's the one I had the most exposure to, so it's the one I know the best personally. But Solomon Grundy poses a very unique challenge here, because Solomon Grundy is a character who actually at points doesn't even have a soul. And the whole idea of a Zanpakuto is your soul basically personified into a blade. It is you. It is your representation of who you are, your soul, all that. But if you don't have a soul, well, that poses a very big problem. Now, there are interpretations of Solomon Grundy where the essence of who he was prior, Cyrus Gold, his soul still exists on some level in Solomon Grundy. So we can use that to kind of go off of the idea of a Zanpakuto. However, given the nature of Solomon Grundy, this still becomes interesting, because Solomon Grundy is a character, he's a zombie, who constantly, every time he dies, comes back, and he comes back, weirdly enough, with a new ability. His powers fluctuate throughout comics multiple times. As I said, we'll look mostly at the animated version, despite the picture I have. But, yeah, it posed a unique challenge, to say the least. But if we are looking at the Solomon Grundy we get in the Justice League series, kind of a slow-witted, basically it's dumb brute who's just like, Grundy want his gold. But also who wasn't truly evil per se. He actually it could be heroic if he needed to, fought Eldritch Cthulhu-like beings and all that. Then we might be able to work with that. So, first and foremost, it's a melee type, in my opinion. I do not see this as a Cyrus Gold, a little bit of Cyrus that's in there did not strike me as a complex keto-type individual. It struck me as very much as a beat you over the head with a lead pipe kind of guy. Yes, his Zanpakuto turns into a lead pipe. No. Now, it's a standard katana, but obviously with Grundy holding it, it's very small. It looks like a freaking butter knife compared to just a dagger, just because of Grundy's sheer size. Its release would be Reborn, or not be Reborn, but just Reborn. The reason it would just be Reborn is because I think Grundy's vocabulary is limited. We know it's limited. So I think it actually limits his diction even when it comes to its release. Its name would be Greed Sledge, or Don Yukuna Sori. And its Bankai would be Avarice Hammer, which is actually greed and avarice are the same thing and are translated to the same word, Don Yukuna, except this case it would be Hanma. And you can hear Grundy going, Bankai Donkun Donyokuna Hanma. The spirit would actually be Cyrus Gold himself, but it would be because Cyrus Gold is kind of is in there, but he's not whole. He's kind of a broken version of himself. So what you get is probably a very wispy, hard to see version of Cyrus Gold. And then the Shikai, the form of the Shikai would be a giant sledgehammer. Not Nozarashi size, but a big sledge nonetheless. It's melee, but every Zanpakuto has some type of ability. And again, I use Ikaku as a perfect example. His Zanpakuto is strictly for melee combat, but it's a 3-section breakaway staff with a chain in there. So that is an ability the blade has. Yumachika's false Shikai, it fans out into 4 different blades, like a peacock's feathers. So that is an ability the sword has. It's just not a very powerful ability. It's not a keto ability or anything like that. So every Zanpakuto has some type of ability. So the question would be, what would this sledgehammer do? I honestly think it would be a very simple. It's just even Nozarashi as a power tool has so much power that it can cut through just about anything. That's how much power it actually has. So that is technically the ability of the Zanpakuto. Nozarashi might be the only one you can make an exception to, saying how it's just a pure melee type. But it's the only one you might be able to make that argument for. As for this one, I think what it would be is it would be basically just like a shockwave type Zanpakuto. Where basically it literally is just sending out powerful shockwaves every time it lands a strike. And the harder it hits, the more powerful the shockwave. And Bankai, you would just be getting a much larger hammer, I think. And I think the hammer might even turn into more like the head of the hammer might become the entirety of the blade. So the hammer, what I'm getting at here is the hammer may turn into a giant sword, but it doesn't actually have a blade. It has a giant hammer's head for a blade. It's just the length of a sword. So now when he strikes, he's now basically causing like an earthquake every time he strikes. He's hitting with the force of an earthquake. So it's a very simplistic Zanpakuto, like super simplistic. Yeah, it's super simplistic. Obviously, it's no good at range. More powerful Zanpakuto could easily overpower it. And it's only really good when it's able to, actually strike something. So, yeah, ultimately that is the blade of Solomon Grundy. So, yeah, what do you think about this? Honestly, it's a simplistic Zanpakuto for a really weirdly complicated character, because the type of character it is, it just doesn't lend itself to a very creative Zanpakuto, despite the fact that the origin and the backstory of this character is quite complicated, or very unique. So that is the blade of Solomon Grundy. What do you think? Do you agree with this, or what would you do differently if you would do something differently for this character? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.